Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming in Diablo 4. Season 2 is right around the corner, so it's finally time to think about what I'm actually going to do with my Necromancer. What build am I going to run to level 50 and beyond as fast as possible and as strong as possible? Well, major changes have happened as revealed by the latest patch notes for the season. Things like Bone Spear being ultra nerfed. They've cut the power in half on its own, but also massively reduced the power of crit and vulnerable damage, so Bone Spear is probably not going to be the best option undeniably anymore. But having said that, it might still be a good option. But for leveling initially, I don't think it's Bone Spear. So where does that leave us? Well, they've buffed minion builds, shadow builds, and blood builds after all, so which is going to be the best pick? Well, with crit and vulnerable damage changed, and overpower damage greatly improved mechanically, I actually think the answer is pretty clear. Blood builds should dominate the early and mid game because they have a much lower gear dependency before they get going. Perfect for leveling. Shadow builds have insane potential in the end game in Season 2 from what we can see. They might even be the best. Minion builds have better survivability immediately, sure, but buffs across the board in the Paragon and so on, so later game minion builds might be a lot more relevant too. Meanwhile, blood builds just work straight away and provide a ton of survivability while they do it. Right now, Blood Surge is one of the top picks for leveling 1 to 50 and beyond, and that's before it's massively improved in Season 2. On the other hand, Blood Lance was aggressively buffed over many patches and was doing really well in Season 1. Now in Season 2, with the way Blood Orbs are going to influence your key passive, Rathma's Vigor, it could be insane. So let's look at what's happening here. Crit and vulnerable damage have been changed. This was their statement on that. We are changing how critical strike, vulnerable, and overpower damage is calculated. These damage types will now always have a baseline multiplicative bonus, while additional sources of bonus critical strike damage, vulnerable damage, or overpower damage, these will be additive to your other damage bonuses. So my understanding on that is that all the ways we're increasing our crit and vulnerable is now going to be additive rather than multiplicative, so it's going to be much more limited in the ceiling of those damage types. It might feel better short term with the additive having more impact, but worse long term where the multiplication takes more effect. On the other hand, overpower is getting extra additive damage based on your max health and fortify, pushing its potential higher. Overpower no longer seems like it's going to be based on your health and fortify at the time, just gets bonus additive damage based on those things, and scales with crit and other additive bonuses in general. So it sounds really good, it's just, it'd be nice if we could actually see this or test it in some way, rather than go based on what they think and what they've said. There were also a bunch of overpower improvements in just terms of numbers that you can see here. So across the board, considering blood builds were centered around overpower and not crit or vulnerable damage nearly as much, this is big. You know, towards the end of Season 1, blood builds were close to real greatness, overshadowed by things like Bone Spear, like everyone else. This feels like a turning point for the Necromancer meta, and I think Necromancers are going to be incredible in Season 2. But then there's the ultra impactful updates to blood related builds to think about, starting with the key passive Rathma's Vigor. We are losing the increase to max HP by 10% times, but gaining a way to reduce the guaranteed overpower timer on it. Normally you'd need to be healthy for 12 seconds, then get 1 guaranteed overpower on your next blood skill. Now we can reduce that timer by 2 seconds each time a blood orb heals or overheals us for an amount greater than or equal to your base life. This massively improves how impactful blood orbs are to blood builds. They clearly want blood orbs to be a key component, so we want to spawn as many of them as possible and collect them as fast as possible when building our key passive. Combine that with a new aspect back from Season 1, Gore Quills. You could use your blood lance to pop all of those blood orbs from range instead of having to walk around and pick them up. But then there's this incredible update to the skill tree, skill Transfusion. Transfusion used to heal minions when popping a blood orb. Now it has this lucky hit effect. Blood skills now have a 3, 6, or 9% chance to spawn a blood skill, limited to once per 4 seconds, but doubled against bosses. This is giving us a way to consistently spawn blood orbs outside of, say, corpse tendrils and otherwise, and a direct way to do it using blood skills. Also, we can increase the potency of said healing with a new gruesome mending rework, receive 10, 20, or 30% more healing from all sources, meaning our blood orbs are going to be much more effective at raw healing, therefore they're going to work for Rathma's Vigor much better. Staying healthy is vital for overpower blood builds, and they've made that more likely with this new talent. With those things in mind, what should we be building for leveling? Well, between Blood Lance and Blood Surge, Lance seems to have more potential in the endgame. With Gore Quills aspect, you can trigger all those blood orbs at once from range without having to manually collect them, and also Blood Surge is basically melee range as a skill, so in higher tiers you're going to be in more danger forcing yourself to melee compared to Lance being able to, you know, deal damage from range. Also, since New Transfusion is based on lucky hit and Blood Surge has a base of 12% lucky hit compared to Lance with a much better 33%, again Lance seems more effective late game. To be honest, I think Blood Surge should really have its own way to consume blood orbs instead of having to manually pick them up. I actually think Blizzard have messed up in a way, not giving Blood Surge more attention compared to all the Bloodlance stuff they've done. So Bloodlance, in theory, will be the better long-term pick compared to Blood Surge. But we aren't thinking about long-term, are we? We're thinking about how do you get to levels 50 and beyond as fast as possible. And, you know, we don't even know how we're going to get Gore Quills because it used to come from the season journey, so it's unreliable to say Bloodlance is the right pick. I actually think we want to go Blood Surge until we have what we need for a Bloodlance build. And even then, Surge is still going to be great, just potentially overshadowed by Lance in theory. Let's now go through the leveling path for a Blood Surge build for leveling all the way to 50 and beyond. We'll consider our first Paragon board and Glyph 2, and then we'll look at the new Vampire Powers and think about what our best options for that might be. Alright, so here we are with the skill tree and our 58 points available. We're going to go through this together. Now, as we go, there are going to be some decisions we need to make and points we will actually defund to put elsewhere later. That is because it's actually a good idea to use your skeletons early game. You just get given an extra skill, they tank damage for you, they deal their own damage, they're obviously better this season. So on our way to say 30 or so, you might end up using skeletons. So we'll explain why and let's go through it. To begin with, we're going to need our basic, and that's of course going to be Hemorrhage. Hemorrhage is a 20% chance to form a blood orb as we do it, and as I've just covered, blood orbs are insane in Season 2 and very important. We'll go for Enhanced to make it so when we pick up a blood orb, there's that Hemorrhage AoE potential, and increasing the actual essence we get per enemy hit by the AoE Hemorrhage. At this point, we're actually not going to go for the final enhancement. Both of them are great picks, just because we've actually reached our core, where of course we want to pick up Blood Surge. We'll take one level into that and go for the enhancement, and then we really desperately want Paranormal Blood Surge specifically. This is the thing that's causing a guaranteed Blood Surge overpower. Each time you use Blood Surge, you get a stack, and at 5 stacks, your next Blood Surge will guarantee overpower. At which point, we're ready to move on to the next level. We just need one more point. We could level up Blood Surge once more, but it just feels good to go back to the basic with Hemorrhage and get one of these final enhancements. Like I said, both are good. This provides Fortify, this provides attack speed. I think attack speed is going to be more relevant to us right now. This brings us to our next set, where we're not actually that excited. There's of course Blood Mist, where we're going to get it much later on, but early game we don't care about iframes and CCing ourselves. What we care about is essence generation, because, you know, Blood Surge is pretty expensive on essence, 25 a cast. You can fix this in two ways. We can actually take Bone Prison here, because its enhancement means you get 25 essence and then 5 per extra enemy trapped. So in AoE, this is a ton of essence. And it comes with Dreadful Bone Prison, which fortifies you. The more we have Fortify, the more overpower we do as the additive damage comes in, empowering our overpowers, which is quite a nice synergy there. Then we're actually going to take Grim Harvest. This is something we will defund and only use temporarily, because when you summon a skeleton or say a skeletal priest, this actually gives us 2 levels, 4 essence every time we do that, which is just really nice, especially when we're going to be very essence hungry to begin with. Down on the next tree, we want so much here. We'll start, of course, with Decrepify, applying that to enemies to slow them and making them deal 20% less damage while afflicted for the 10 seconds. Now, we're not really going to have a lot of lucky hit in this build, so Enhanced Decrepify for the chance to stun isn't amazing, but in leveling, Horrid Decrepify is pretty awesome. If they're afflicted by Decrepify and at 10% or lower health, they will be instantly killed unless they're a boss. So during leveling, this just snaps targets in a way that's kind of regular and unexpected. It's quite nice to have. Because we're applying Decrepify to targets, we can also benefit from amplified damage. Those cursed targets take 4% times, now 8% times increased damage at just 2 points into it. We'd love to continue putting points in this area, but the truth is, this is super important. This is our major power spike, all of our blood passives, and very important, our AoE pull-in, stun, and ultimately Blood Orb Spawner. So we're going to take 1 level in Corpse Tendrils to get that, enhance it, and take Blighted, which will be our primary source for them in a lot of ways. Now we can focus on the passives. What's interesting about this is we want all of these, literally all of them, and 3 out of 3 in them. We're in game right now in season 1, so the tooltip isn't showing what gruesome mending will actually do, but 3 levels of that will mean 30% increased healing from all sources. It's pretty important. We take 1 point in that just to get to Coalesce Blood, which then gets us to Tides of Blood, the most important passive here, because this is actually going to increase your overpower damage, which we absolutely want. This is actually enough points to get us to the ultimate tree, but as we are not running an ultimate and currently still running our skeletons, we're going to wait to get these passives and continue with the passives that matter here. Drain Vitality is going to cause blood skills to have a 30% chance to fortify for our health, so that's going to be very important for our overpower damage and staying healthy. Coalesce Blood means we're going to deal more damage with our blood skills while healthy, so also really important. The new Transfusion is going to give us a 3, 6 or 9% chance to spawn a blood orb, limited to once per every 4 seconds, with double chances against bosses, so we want at least 1 point in that too. We don't have massive lucky hit in the build, so it's probably a lower priority because of that, but we still need 3 more points to actually reach our most important thing, the key passives. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 2 levels into Gruesome Mending and 1 level more into Transfusion, which gets us to the key passive of Rathma's Vigor. This new key passive is absolutely insane in Season 2. We can reduce its timer for the guaranteed overpower by 2 seconds every time a blood orb heals or overheals us for an amount greater to or equal to our base life. So this is an ultra power spike. At that point, we can come back now, spend 1 point in Transfusion. At this late stage, we should be now thinking about sacrificing our minions, at which point we can start taking Standalone and Memento Mori to actually improve the power and potency of those sacrifices and damage reduction for the more minions we don't have. This brings us back up the tree to finish off Amplified Damage now, and then all the way back up to the core skill area where we're going to put 1 point into Unliving Energy and 3 into Imperfectly Balanced, meaning we're spending more essence to cast our core skill, but we're getting increased damage for it. The reason we only have 1 point in Blood Surge is because Overpower wasn't really benefiting from more levels. However, that may change in Season 2. It's not something I've been able to test, obviously, so you may want to put levels into this sooner than I did, but by leveling it, you slightly improve the damage of the skill, but potentially not the Overpower damage. At this point, though, we'll finish it off just to improve our consistent damage. Now we'll come down and finally pick up 3 out of 3 on Death's Embrace to improve our close damage, which we will be doing since we are dealing damage to close enemies with Blood Surge, and reduce the damage we take by 9% as well. As a reminder, when you stop using skeletons and sacrifice them, you also want to get rid of your 2 levels in Grim Harvest since you're not consuming corpses anymore. We can finally pick up our iframe ability, Blood Mist, which when enhanced actually reduces its cooldown every time we land an overpower, so that's nice. We're not generating corpses for any real reason, so we're taking Dreadful Blood Mist because it helps fortify and therefore stay healthy and overhealed. With our last points, we're going to come down to Inspiring Leader, which is newly buffed in Season 2. On the tooltip here, it says be healthy for at least 4 seconds, but the new tooltip in Season 2 means you only need to be healthy for 2 seconds to get that attack speed buff. We're left over with an awkward 1 singular point, which I put into Decrepify just to slightly improve the effect of the slow and the damage reduction that it provides. And that is the skill tree. Of course, you'll be wondering about the Book of the Dead, though. In terms of the sacrifices we go, I'm looking at the Defenders one because it's going to give us 20% resistance to all elements in Season 2, so I think it's going to be quite potent. Of course, for the mages, it's the very obvious sacrifice of Bone Mages because it's going to improve your overpower damage. Then lastly, on the Golem, it's of course Blood to increase our maximum life, which will affect our survivability and overpower potential. As promised, here's a quick overview of your first 2 Paragon boards, just to really showcase what you're probably aiming for in those early levels of 50 to 60, though remember this is a leveling build, so the Paragon board and plans will change as we get a real build going. In any case, to begin with, I'm starting with the Glyph of Blood Drinker, because Blood Orbs will fortify you, that fortifies your max life, that increases our overpower, keeps survivability, maybe keeps us healthy. It's a nice starting point, but it does require 40 intelligence, and this is how I've achieved it without extending the radius by leveling this specific socket. In any case, I efficiently do that, pick up both of the rare nodes on the way, and we move to our first board extension, which is the all-important Bloodbath, which has actually changed in Season 2. As you can see, previously attacks that guaranteed overpower had 50% times increased overpower damage, and in the new one, all overpowered attacks deal 35% times increased overpower. So for the guaranteed, it's weaker, but it means any overpower, not just guaranteed ones, are going to be more powerful. And with the rebalancing of overpower, it's still very good. So that's the legendary node and board we care about. I come up to the left and make my way through the powerhouse node on the way, which actually improves our overpowered damage, which is nice, and make my way to the legendary node. Then we come to the right to the glyph, which is Dominate, of course. When you overpower an enemy, they take more damage by 12% times for 5 seconds, And as you enhance this with willpower, it improves your raw overpowered damage, so a super important one to have. To achieve this secondary effect, I spend my points like so to get the willpower around the main glyph to actually activate it. Next, in terms of gear, since you're going to be limited by what's available to you, I'm going to highlight the most important things. For example, the offensive one, which is the most important one, Blood Bathe. It causes your blood surge to echo again, dealing reduced damage, but the overpower effect won't care about that, meaning you have more chances to overpower and deal more damage with your blood surge. Second to that, the most important resource generator is going to be the new potent blood aspect. As you can see, previously it would only work when at full life, and that would cause blood orbs to grant you 10 to 20 essence. Now this will work when you are healthy, so it's going to be a primary way we get essence and an achievable one during leveling. Other than that, you'll be looking for defensives. Most important will be disobedience, and then of course you've got might and protector aspect, which generates a barrier when dealing damage to an elite. All three of these will be nice defensives to have at some point. Also around that, you might find things that generate attack speed, like the Rathmas Chosen, which is going to be a very good aspect for the build. Blood skills that overpower give you attack speed for 4 seconds, and then the standard rapid, increasing the actual attack speed of your basic skills. So these are the general ones that I'll be on the lookout for as a level, with the offensive and resource gen ones mattering the most. Moving on then, it's time for us to talk about the Vampiric Powers that we're going to be getting in Season 2. These seem a bit complicated when you first look at them, but we can basically cut them into two sides. There's the major versions of these powers and the minor versions. Logically, you'll be getting minors more often and easier, but the question is, how many majors will you get and when? How many can you run? These are questions I still have. So what we're going to do is look at a selection of ones that seem most interesting for a Blood Surge leveling build, and ultimately, when you get these, maybe you can use them. Firstly, Metamorphosis, which seems insane. When you evade, you'll turn into a cloud of bats, becoming unstoppable for 4 seconds. It sounds like you just have a new blood mist that everyone can use. Enemies along the path of that cloud of bats, though, take 160% physical damage and are inflicted with a vampiric curse. This seems like universally the best major vampire power that I can see, so I would have to assume that it's going to be hard to get your hands on. Second to that, I like the look of Blood Boil. When your core skills overpower an enemy, hey, perfect for us, you spawn 3 volatile blood drops. Collecting a volatile blood drop causes it to explode, dealing 60% physical damage around you every 20 seconds. Your next skill is also going to be guaranteed to overpower. So what an incredible thing. A third way to get a guaranteed overpower for blood builds. I think this could be really, really good. Lastly, for a major vampiric powers I'm interested in, it's a Cursed Touch. It's the one that has the lucky hit chance to inflict vampiric curse on enemies, and then the enemies with that curse have a smaller chance to actually spread it to surrounding enemies. The vampiric curse is like a new debuff kind of thing, like when you chill an enemy, and killing an enemy affected by the curse stores their soul. Casting a defensive, macabre, or agility skill will then unleash the stored souls to attack nearby enemies. With a Cursed Touch, these accursed souls that come out to attack the enemies will deal 200% increased damage, so that sounds pretty good to me. Then we have our minors, which you should be able to get more of. Starting with Ravenous. It's a lucky hit, up to a 20% chance to increase your attack speed by 40% of your total movement speed for 6 seconds. Attack speed is going to be great for most builds in the game, and considering we're going to be using a basic attack that generates blood orbs, having more attack speed to generate both essence and potentially more blood orbs, that could be really nice. So I do like the look of Ravenous, and I think it's one we might get early on. Next is Prey on the Weak. You deal 16% increased damage to vulnerable enemies. Enemies are vulnerable while affected by a vampiric curse from your other vampiric powers. Potential synergy there with Metamorphosis. The question is, with the reworked Overpower, will that cause vulnerable damage to actually apply and work with? It seems like maybe yes, but the reality might be different, so we can't say for sure. Then we have Domination. You deal 24% increased damage to enemies who are stunned, immobilized, frozen, or feared. If they're also injured and not an elite, they're instantly killed. This seems really good for, mob clear, specifically not bosses and elites ideally. So for leveling, Domination might actually be awesome. Considering we'll be constantly corpse tendriling to stun enemies, yeah, Domination should be very valuable. And also for minor powers, we've got to mention Hemomancy, causing your attacks to deal 80% of your maximum life as physical damage to nearby enemies, giving us a pretty consistent way to AoE. It can only occur once every 4 seconds, but you heal for 1% of your maximum life for each enemy damaged that way. This will help us heal, stay healthy, overheal, and give us again a nice AoE, so I really like that one. Finally, another potential is Undying. Casting skills heals you for 3% life. Double that bonus when below 50% life. Giving us another way to heal and maintain healthy or even overheal could be really nice, especially during leveling when we don't have access to all the aspects we're looking for. So Undying could be a temporary pickup as well. But those are my top picks that I was most interested in looking at and discussing, and however you get them, whenever you get them, those are the ones I think we should pay attention to. I'm seeing a lot of build theories using, say, 3 major and 2 minor, so it'll be something we have to consider. But there you have it. That is my overview of this leveling build in Season 2 for Necromancer on the way to 50 and beyond. Again, I will very likely be back when I have a proper Bloodlance build ready to go to make that comparison and tell you which is better and maybe when should you swap. But I should say all of this we've discussed today is based on theory, things they've told us, but we're not actually allowed to test any of it. There's every chance that they've got things wrong or they forgot to tell us things, details in Season 2 that we just don't know yet. But I do hope this theoretical video helps you go into the Season 2 as a Necromancer with some confidence and maybe some excitement to actually play a blood build. We'll be back for more Season 2 content with the release and loads of stuff following. So until then, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thank you for watching, see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.